Hello and welcome to computer class. My name is Dave and today we're talking about semantic elements. Now, what is a semantic element? And I think this is a stylistic issue for creating websites. And let me just tell you the problem that happens. A lot of times developers get stuck in a rut of using the div tag for almost everything. Instead of using something like the footer or the header or the main tag or the section tag or the article tag, they fall into this rut of let's just use a div tag for everything and put a div inside of a div inside of a div. And while that does work and you can do that, it leads to code that looks like someone just threw divs all over the page in a vomit fashion, and it doesn't look well organized. It's not a good way to write code. And so you can use divs. We're not saying that divs are a bad thing, but these other semantic elements that are created create better organization of code, and it's how we should use and write code. Okay, so an example of a non-semantic element is a div and a span. Tells nothing about the content. However, if you use the container for the form, you know that you're creating a form. Now you could use a div tag, but then we won't know it's a form. For instance, a table. You could use a div tag for a table, but really you should use the table container because that way we know it's a table. If you are writing out a whole bunch of text and it's kind of in an article format, use the article tag. I mean, why use a div? Now you could use a div. No one's stopping you, again. But this clearly defines the content, and therefore it makes the document object model more clearer to those who read the code outside of what you're doing. So here are the elements that are associated with things. Article, aside, details, fig caption, figure, footer, header, main, mark, nav, section, summary, and time. I'm not going to use all of these in this short lesson here, but enough to get you started, if that makes sense. So the first of these is the section tag, and the section element defines a part of a document, so a section, if you will. Now, something that could be noted here is if you scroll down to the article tag, section and article sort of overlap in a ways. The article tag really it specifies independent self-contained content, which again seems like the same thing as the section tag. I think section tag is bigger than the article, like it contains everything in that section. So, but that's debated, and whether or not you use it that way is totally up to you. Because if you scroll all the way down here, and again, I'm on W3 School's HTML tutorial, HTML semantics here, they say article or section or vice versa. The article element specifies independent self-contained content. The section element defines a section of the document, which means you could kind of interchange them. And so they even argue against themselves and say, which one. I kind of say that the section element should be outside of the article element, but again, that's highly up to opinion right there. Okay, so they even decide to nest an article inside of an article here. And so, I mean, to me, I would have used a section potentially here, but technically this whole thing is an article, so why not use article? Anyway, you get the point. There starts to become these semantical issues, and this is why people just fall back to their div problem. But anyway, let's add them nonetheless. So we've got section here. And they say, according to this, that it defines a section of the document. Just going to copy that and drop it in. All right, and then the next one down is the article tag, and they say element specifies a independent self-contained content. I hope I spelled that right. All right, and now this is really, really big, so let's make it a 10. There we go. article, article. Sure. Okay, moving on. The next tag is the header tag, and it's kind of confusing because we also have headline tags, which are sorry, heading tags, which are different than the header tags. You have headings H1 through 6, one or more heading elements 1 through 6, and so they say that this header element typically contains one or more of the heading elements. Notice several header elements in one HTML document. However, a header cannot be placed within a footer, address, or another header element. So you can't like stack them, which is super confusing as all get out. But nonetheless, mainly what they're used for is inside of an article, or you could technically throw them at the top of a HTML document. See, yeah, they can be used several places. So again, it's a bit confusing sometimes as to where you can use these, but I would tend to use them inside of the article because again, we're building these containers, these semantical containers, maybe section, article, and inside of that you have a header, a paragraph, and maybe a link or a picture or something like that. So that would make sense. All right, so let's put in the header tag here. We already have it. So website or navigation section header. Okay, right there. Moving on, footer. Footer defines a footer for a document or section. So it can even be in a section. Here they put it just in the bottom of an HTML document. However, you could easily stick it in the bottom of one of these, like right after the paragraph tag here. You could have a header, main paragraph section, and then a footer. So that's something to be noted. Again, we already have it in here as something you can put into your document. The nav section, which again we already have as well, is something you might have in and of itself. And this is what people tend to wrap into a div. They put a div around the navigation section. The reason for that is a lot of times you'll have to add in a logo or something, which is an image tag. And so you'd wrap the div around the nav and the image. And then inside of that, you would have the anchor tags. So sometimes this isn't seen as a huge section tag, but nonetheless it is. And you would use that quite often at the top of every single HTML page. The aside element used for creating somewhat of a sidebar, and you would want to shift that to the side, obviously with CSS, which is what they do. They push it over. If I look at this illustration here, they shove this example to this one side. So again, that's what an aside is for. And again, you'd have to use CSS to actually make that work. Figure and Fig Caption. Tag specifies self-contained content like illustrations, diagrams, photos, code listings, etc. And here's an example. They have a picture with a figure at the bottom and a fig caption. Okay, and they wrap an image in there too to make sure everything is together. So again, why semantic elements? According to W3C, a semantic web allows data to be shared and reused across applications, enterprises, and communities. It creates a standardization for things. All right, so let's actually take what we've learned here and try to write some of this out. And to do that, I'm going to need just one line of text here. All right, so I'm going to go to brackets, file new, file save as, and we're going to go to the desktop here, index.html. Now normally I would create a directory structure, but because today we are doing such a simple thing, I don't really need it. All right, so we have our HTML elements, push those apart. Tab in, I've got my head section here. Inside the head, I've got my title tag. All right, and then below that, I have a body section. All right, and inside my body here, section, of course, I'm going to put a section. All right, and this section is going to have an article in it. There we go. It's actually going to have two articles. All right, and then inside of those articles, we're going to have headers and as they put things, well, let's put it all in first. I do a paragraph, words. Actually, I should just put the words in I just copied. There we go. Whoa. All right, cool. You've got the header, and then we have the footer. Oops. All right. Info. Header. Actually, I should just say footer. Right? And I could easily just wrap this as well. Okay. Cool. So there's one article. If I just grab this one, throw it into the other one, just to make things balanced here, you can kind of see how things are going. Now I could easily, we could clean this up a little bit. I think some people are going to balk at the way I'm doing this because not everyone does everything the same, and that's part of code. Like people sometimes argue as to how code should be, and I mean that's okay because, there's going to be different styles out there. Right, so let's just say in this article that's what you want. All right, and I should just copy this down here. That way it's a little bit cleaner, that's a little bit more stackable. So you have your article, header, paragraph in there, footer, right? And you can style all these different sections then. Now above this section I might put in a nav. And in here I might put in a anchor tag, ref equals, and I'm just going to give it a placeholder at the moment. I'm going to say home. And let me just do this several times. So say about. Picks. And I don't know, something else. Products. Right. Okay, so following some of their semantical things that they did, here they have a nav, right? And so we have everything. Let's load that up and see what happens. Going back to my desktop here, double clicking, and you can see here it doesn't look very amazing because we don't have CSS, but you can see we have a little bit of a navigation across the top here. We have our header, followed by this section, a footer, header, followed by this section, footer, and all the styling in between. Now you could zero out some of this padding and all the different things that are associated with each one of these tags. Obviously, you could do that, but that still, I think, creates a great indication of how you're supposed to style correctly, or lay out correctly, I should say, your page. A lot of people don't do this with HTML. Again, their temptation is to just, oh look, here's a section, let's put a div in there. Oh look, here's a section, I'll just put another div in. Oh, I need more styling, But that is not the best way to write HTML code. Now, that changes a little bit if you're going to use something called Bootstrap 4. And if you take my tutorial on that, you will see you have to use a lot of divs, but not the case for writing just pure straight up HTML. So there you have it. All right, so that's my explanation of semantic elements for HTML. Hopefully you learned something today. And as always, I will see you in the next video.